right? There's just these basic cadences of life that I think are really powerful and really, really valuable when you have kids in your life. And the fact that so many people, especially in America's leadership class, just don't have that in their lives, I worry that it makes people more sociopathic and ultimately our whole country a little bit less less mentally stable. And of course, you talk about going on Twitter. Final point I'll make is you go on Twitter, and almost always the people who are most deranged and most psychotic are people who don't have kids at home.
Yeah, that video came out this week. That's just the latest kind of crazy video, crazy quotes from Republican vice presidential candidate nominee and Senator J.D. Vance talking about childless Americans as being, and you heard that, sociopathic or psychotic online. Yeah, he's been on a roll since he got the nod just 2 weeks ago with clip after clip emerging of his longtime assault on, well, American voters. For some reason, he's not a fan of all of us, and he has strong opinions that are going to bite him in the butt. This has been a thing for a while with him. Here's a clip of him on the Tucker Carlson show like 2 years ago.
Saying is that we're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. And it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it?
Offensive, sexist, bigoted. I don't even know where to start with this guy. What will really bend your brain is that he's only been a father for 6 years. His kid's 6 years old. He's obsessed. I mean, for 33 of his 39 years of life, he wasn't a father. And yet now he has really strong opinions about who should have a voice in our country's future. Because for some reason, the only way you can actually care about the future of America, according to J.D. Vance, is having children, not going to war like many of us, or a thousand other reasons for you to care about our nation. Well, I found somebody with a very unique perspective on this. And this week he spoke up, and he knows him very well. And he offers a very clear idea of who J.D. Vance is and what are the values he should reflect. As a matter of fact, it's Congressman Greg Lansman. He actually represents Ohio's 1st District and is actually J.D. Vance's congressman. He's known him for decades, and he offered his take on this odd campaign approach this week on Twitter. As soon as I saw his tweets, I said, I got to get this guy in the hot seat, and I was lucky. He reached right out to me, and so we're going to get a chance to talk to Congressman Greg Lansman right here in the hot seat with Fred Wellman. You're on the MeidasTouch Network, and let's get to talking. Congressman Lansman, thank you so much for joining us. It's such a privilege to have you. I saw your thread yesterday on Twitter, and I said, I'd love to talk to that guy. And here we are the next day. So I really appreciate it. You've got a unique perspective on the Republican VP nominee more than most, I think. And does his weird campaign really reflect the values of Southwest Ohio as he claims he does?
No, not at all. So it's been a weird couple of weeks for us because we're seeing this guy and J.D. Vance, who, I grew up in Butler County. He grew up in Butler County. He's a constituent of mine. He lives a few miles from me here in Cincinnati. I drive past his house every day, and I know this community. I've been representing this community, Southwest Ohio, for almost 2 years now in Congress, but before that, for 5 years at City Hall. And we are very normal. We're very pragmatic. There are those of us who are more progressive and some who are more conservative. But for the most part, we're all very normal people. And one of the things we really like about Cincinnati and Southwest Ohio is that we all kind of get along and we know each other. Like, it's a small community. We don't know Vance personally because he doesn't hang out with any of us and never really has. He really does sort of do better in the Silicon Valley world. That's his world, and I think that's one of the reasons why he got on the ticket, was to help Trump raise money and to be that connection to super wealthy people, but not to us, because the things he says, and he's been doing this throughout his entire sort of political career, however brief. It's so divisive and it's sometimes kind of creepy, but always weird. Just not at all who we are at all.
Yeah, and he's got that. He's run that story, through his book and through his life, and this strange thing. But and you too. It's not just the the values that he's talking, but it's also the plans, right? And you touched on it a little bit. I mean, he is buddies with the authors of Project 2025, and there's some really dark stuff in that plan that he supports, isn't it?
Yeah. So, and just to give you a sense of, I think this is very problematic for Trump. I mean, one, all of this makes Trump look weak because I think people are appreciating pretty, quickly that this is Palin-esque in terms of a really bad decision. So it makes him look weak. It makes Trump look like a bad decision maker. But worst is that it makes him look chaotic and extreme, and that Vance in many ways brings out reminds people of all of the things that they're really worried about Donald Trump and the things that concern them, which is the Project 2025 stuff. Vance is friends with the person who led it. He wrote the foreword to his book, in which he said, glowing things that these are great ideas. This is the future of of the conservative movement. And we're talking about in this, and this is why it's so problematic for all of us, is he's talking about federal surveillance of abortions and pregnancies, getting rid of health care through the Affordable Care Act, getting rid of the EPA, having the FBI no longer be independent but report directly to the president so that the president can go after his political enemies. And look, I'm a father. I'm a former teacher. I have a master's in theological studies. Like, faith is a big part of my life. In this plot, this 2025 plot, is this commitment to ban porn, which is just weird. This is not, I don't know who is out there saying, this is what we want. And look, in our district, our congressional district, very purple, again, equal number Democrats, Republicans, Independents, one part city, one part suburb, one part rural Ohio. I won by 6, and he lost by almost 9. And that gives you a sense how out of touch, dangerously out of touch he is.
Well, that's the thing. You saw the polls that he's actually now that he's the most unpopular VP nominee in the modern era. That he's actually minus 16 in your state and the surrounding region. I mean, you pick a VP nominee so you can pull a state, and it's the exact opposite in this case, isn't it? And you're right. It goes to the strategic error of Donald Trump, and it does go to the political megalomania of J.D. Vance, doesn't it?
I think it hurts Trump to have Vance be the person who's out there representing them, because he represents the worst of what they have to offer, which is the Paul Ryan wing of the party that wants to cut Social Security, Medicare, the Marjorie Taylor Greene wing of the party that wants to pick every culture war fight and be as cruel as possible, and then the Matt Gaetz wing of the party that is pro-Putin and doesn't want America fighting for democracy and freedom in Eastern Europe or anywhere else. And we have a bunch of candidates that are for the exact opposite, right? We want to protect our democracy. We want to restore freedom. We want an economy that works for working people. And we want politics that's normal again.
Yeah, and that's the key, isn't it? Because that weird. It's funny how the weirdness thing is taken off, right? But that's really a lot of ways to describe it. We've called them liars, we've called them evil, whatever. They kind of dig that, I think. But the weird is the thing. I mean, like you said earlier, you said that who's asking for these things? Who's asking? Who are they answering to when they want these strange things that they've talked about, and that he talks about quite a bit? And they're not the values of the average person. And I think what you said too key is who is it actually helping? I mean, I think what I know about you and I know about our party right now, especially Kamala, is we're actually trying to get policies that make a difference, that will improve infrastructure, that will improve American manufacturing. And that's the record of the last 3 years, right? And that's the kind of things you work at. I mean, it really is about building an economy that is for working people and not the billionaires. And that's serious. It's kind of the billionaires who nominated J.D. Vance, isn't it?
Yeah, they were the ones that wanted him, and Trump, based on the reporting, wants to keep him because of his relationship with these billionaires, not with us in Southwest Ohio. It's not his connection to folks in Butler County. Like, I'm still friends with my friends from growing up in Butler County. I mean, I see them on a regular basis, and I have lots and lots of friends here in Cincinnati, a city I represent and have been representing for several years. He he doesn't really. I mean, he really isn't here. And and that's because he's either in DC or in Silicon Valley. And again, it's problematic in that weird for the American people is it means one, I've got to worry about you when I've got all these other things I have to worry about. I want my elected officials like Greg Lansman or Sherrod Brown or Kamala Harris or whoever it is who to be people who care about me and are worried about my childcare and whether or not I can afford preschool or housing, whether or not college is more affordable, whether or not I'm going to be at the front end of the tax relief or at the back. And with Trump and Vance and Moreno and the guy I'm running against, they have to worry about them because it gets so strange and weird that the one, they're constantly having to worry about them, but two, the policies will be such that upend their lives. Like, it's all of a sudden they don't have the health care they had. All of a sudden they have to travel outside of the state to get a procedure because of how weird and cruel and extreme these folks are. All of a sudden they've got less in Social Security, or all of a sudden, they can't go online and do whatever it is they want to do online because JD Vance is a weird guy who to ban all kinds of stuff, and Trump does too.
Yeah, and he's only been a dad for 6 years. I keep going back to that one. I mean, for somebody who's so obsessed with being that fatherhood's everything, he's only been doing it for 6 years. I've been a dad for like 30, and it's not my entire
Well, I guess
personality.
this like speaks to look, and this is where I think he really is problematic in that Trump sort of offended an entire gender.
Hmm.
Vance is traumatizing an
Mm.
entire gender. I mean, saying like, "Hey, you're less than because you don't have kids." I mean, so many of my friends have tried, and they've been able to have a family because of IVF if they can afford it. What if that was banned and now he's going to punish them or see them as less than or call them names or say how desperate and unhappy they are. These are really good human beings who work really hard. Some of them want a family, some of them don't. But they're our neighbors, and they're wonderful, hardworking people who are just as good and just as and happy, quite frankly. I mean, the whole thing represents another world, a world that we don't really understand here in Southwest Ohio. We hear him on these podcasts and on cable news, and it is not someone that speaks like he's from here.
Yeah, and that's the key. So you're also running for re-election, right? Of course, we have to talk about that. How's your race going, and what are your priorities for this cycle as you run for re-election? I think it's your first re-election run. I mean, I'm sure you've learned some great lessons the last 2 years. This first cycle, it's been obviously a crazy one when you're in the minority. I know you're on the Veterans Affairs Committee, which is close to my heart, obviously as a veteran. What are your priorities for this cycle as you go and want to represent the people of Southwest Ohio again?
Well, first of all, thank you for your service. I love being on the Vets Committee. It is one of the remaining sort of bipartisan committees where
Yeah.
people, both Democrats and Republicans, just do the work because we have so much on the line in terms of our ability to impact the lives of veterans. So it's been a nice sort of corner of Congress where Republicans and Democrats really do work together on behalf of veterans. My issues and the things that we're working on are very similar to what you're hearing around the country because it is such a swing district. People are very concerned about the economy and they want to make sure that the tax code in the economy is built for them, not billionaires. They want to make sure that reproductive freedom is restored and that other freedoms aren't messed with. And they want to make sure that we're strengthening our democracy and we're not letting anyone upend it. Like they tried to do on January 26th, or around that election, and what they're proposing to do in Project 2025. They also, my voters, Democrats, Independents, and a lot of Republicans want a return to normal. They just want to be done worrying about their politicians. They have too much going on in their lives to have to worry about, my opponent or Moreno or Vance or Trump and what they're going to do to their lives. And so they want pragmatic, bipartisan, normal people, and I think that's what they appreciate about me, which is all my bills have been bipartisan. I don't spend any time on Twitter. I certainly have an account, but I don't go on. And the same with cable news. If I'm on cable news, it's because I'm talking about them and the issues that matter. I'm not trying to make a name for myself and say crazy things that cause all kinds of issues. So, yeah, my opponent is his number one priority, or has said my priority is Trump, which is not us. He has said that he is committed to a national abortion ban, no exceptions, a ban on IVF, a ban on gay marriage. And he lives in the 8th congressional district, not the 1st. So I always say that the only thing he and I have in common is that neither one of us will be voting for him. So.
Wow. Well, never a dull moment. And it's funny, and I'll let you go on that one, is I can't tell you how often I hear that too. People want government to be boring again, right? Just people who want to go there like yourself and just do the work, right? And not think about it. I don't want to know your name that bad, So the most important question I ask everybody that gets on this show, sir, where can people find you, throw some dollars in your bank and help you beat your opponent and get back up to DC and do the work we need?
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's GregLansman.com. I don't take corporate PAC money, unlike my opponent and Vance and Trump and Moreno. So the individual donations make a huge difference. GregLansman.com.
I appreciate you, sir. Thanks for your time. We will see you again. Good luck in your race, and thanks for your perspective on this. It matters a lot. So appreciate it. Talk to you soon. Man, what a great conversation with Congressman Lansman. A very unique perspective on J.D. Vance. I want to highlight something we talked about in that, right? The fact that J.D. Vance lost his own congressional district by 9 points, whereas Congressman Lansman got elected, a Democrat, by 6 points. They actually picked a guy for vice president who didn't win his home congressional district when he ran for Senate. Says a lot about their choices over there at that VP decision with the Republicans. So, another fascinating conversation here in the hot seat. I hope you enjoyed it. I love doing these interviews. We'll be doing a lot more. We're going to start ramping back up again. We're headed to the DNC, so we'll get some new ones there too. I can't wait. As always, I am Fred Wellman. You're on the MeidasTouch Network. Find new episodes of On Democracy with FP Wellman, my usual show, Friday nights at 11 Eastern, right here in the MeidasTouch. Get in the fight, folks. We're down to double digits till this election. We can do anything for that amount of time. What we need more than anything is for you and your friends and your family to get in the fight for our democracy. I hope you will. We'll see you again soon.